Welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, here's where we take a trip around the state each week and find out where the fish are biting, find out what the weather's like, what's going on with the bait situation, where the action is happening in Florida. You can sit back and relax. We'll start out with a dream trip to Costa Rica, to my favorite billfish destination. Then, starting up in Northeast Florida, we'll work our way all the way around the state, down the East Coast, through the Keys, up the West Coast, and out the Panhandle. And as always, this week is brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people back to nature. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream billfish vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. All right, let's get rolling with a quick trip over to Costa Rica and find out what's going on at Nosara with Captain Craig Sutton. Craig, you put together a 4th of July video piece that I thought was fantastic of the catches that you guys have had recently at Nosara.
Well, it was. I wish I could take credit for it, but you know the brains in the operations matter. But
Yep.
yeah, it was a pretty cool one. It really was. But we've had some amazing catches. We got a Dorado last Friday that I don't know. I think he's over 50. He's a solid fish. But plus, I think we had 7, 8 marlin again last week.
How about that?
Big rooster fish. One real nice rooster fish. It's been super good.
Good deal.
Super good.
Good
Not
deal.
much rain.
The sailfish, I take it, are very consistent.
Real consistent. When the other critters, the marlin aren't biting, the sailfish is there, and they've been getting good numbers of those mixed in with the other fish. But once the marlin comes in and feeds, I think the sailfish are just kind of bowing out for a while.
Yeah, I don't blame them. When the big dog shows up, all little dogs will hide under the porch. But, no, I know what you're talking about. Craig, it almost seems to me now, I certainly can't speak for the Pacific like you can, but I can speak for the Atlantic. It almost seems to me like sailfish numbers have gone up over the last 10 years. Am I right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And there's guys in South Florida are doing the big, consistent numbers. I think it's, our sailfishing here in Northeast Florida has been real consistent last few winters. They've become, there's some days that they're kind of a nuisance out here.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm glad to see it.
Yeah,
it tickles me to
never
death.
thought I'd say that.
No, I know what you mean. No. How's your July and August looking booking-wise? Can people still get a trip over there?
A couple days here and there. I've got a lady is coming in late on July. Kind of got our fishing calendar booked up, but people need to call me. Let's see if we can put something together special. Work in between groups.
Glad I got my reservations in for this summer, I promise you. Give us a phone number for people to call that want to be there.
904-591-2161. FishingNosara.com.
FishingNosara.com. Thank you, Cap. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, Ricky.
Our thanks to Craig Sutton for great news from Nosara, where the marlin are starting to stack up. But now it's time to hit Florida. Let's start up in the northeast corner and check with our buddy Captain David Voorhees. David, how are you?
Pretty good. I'm just sort of drying out, to tell you the truth.
Does it rain every day?
Pretty much. Pretty much every day we've been getting hit with rain. It's been soaking wet. The waterway is very, very muddy. But, we've been changing our tactics up and working hard at it, and we're catching some fish. We're not seeing big numbers right now, Rick, on the redfish or the trout, but we are seeing some real good quality redfish. So, you just have to stick with it. And, right now I've been telling everybody, you got to find the smelly bait. I mean, either it be live bait or the scented baits like gulp and fish bites and those things. You got to find something that they're going to smell it. They got to smell it, and you almost have to get it right under their nose because the water's so dirty right now. They're not going to see your bait. So, the bright colored jig heads, the chartreuse and white, help you out some. But for the most part, we've seen some really, really good quality fish of this week, Rick.
I got you. Now, you sent me the pictures yesterday of what you called a leopard red. Tell people what a leopard red is.
Well, that's more spots than you can really count. I can tell you that much. We'd still be counting the spots if we were there counting them. And they're just covered in spots. Some of them are really, some more than others. I'm talking hundreds of spots. And most of them, they're tiny spots. They're not the really big type of spots that you see. And they're just the whole back part of the fish are usually covered with tiny little spots.
Gotcha. All right. The one you dream of, the fish you dream about for the spot tournament, huh?
Yeah. But that one would have been too big. That one was a 34-inch fish, which had a lot of the ones that I've caught over the years. It's funny, Rick, because I have never caught a small fish that we call a leopard red. And that's only about my third one I've caught up here. And I've seen them in Florida Sportsman before. I've seen them in the magazine. And I've never seen a small one. It seems like they're always big fish, which makes you wonder, does a redfish change his spots?
I don't know. I don't know of any way to really prove that. That's a good question.
Yeah. It's really, really bizarre because I have never seen a small red with the look covered in the tiny spots. Usually it's going to be a 30-plus inch red. Now, all those reds. Go ahead, Rick.
Almost always, you're right. When I used to live on the banks of Trout River, and we caught a lot of what would now be undersized reds, and I'll be darned, you're right. It seems like just about all of them had one or maybe two spots. We certainly never saw any covered in spots like you seem to now. Yeah.
And another thing you'll notice, too, is you'll see a huge gathering of the spots. As a matter of fact, I have one somewhere in my library, one I took a picture of many years ago, and the spots are straight down the lateral line. And it's pretty bizarre, but it's an interesting fish. I think, I think they're beautiful. I don't have a problem releasing those fish. I'm glad we're able to release them. Northeast Florida, we've got a lot of nicknames. We've got fish that really, really get orange, and we call those Pablo pumpkins because they're usually found in the Pablo Creek, and they're really, really orange. And we caught one of those today, and it's just some of the prettiest redfish I've ever seen. And you got to remember, man, I grew up in Biloxi. I fished Louisiana and the Gulf Coast, and I've seen a lot of redfish. But I think some of the prettiest, as far as their coloration goes, the orange on them and the spots and stuff like that, I've seen right here in Northeast Florida.
Yep, and I love it when they have those pretty blue tails, too. David, I appreciate it so very much. Please tell us we can check in with you next week.
Hey, I'll be here, buddy.
Thank you, Captain David Borys, checking in from Northeast Florida. We'll be back. Hey, listen, we got to check out East Central Florida with Jim Ross. But first, let's have a word from our sponsors. The year was 1953 when one of the true pioneers of big game fishing, well, he just hung it up. No, it wasn't any of us. It was none other than Ernest Hemingway. He's credited with saying, I just don't want to do it anymore. The tackle has become so sophisticated, the fish don't have a chance. Can you imagine that, 1953? What if you could walk him through the aisles of strike zone fishing today and show him the latest and greatest from Shimano? Can you imagine handing him a Saragossa spinner that weighs less than his bait but could put more torque on a rampaging tuna than the giant old reels of his day? No, Ernest, I'm afraid you left us way too early. The fights with the great fish still go on. And you know what? Sometimes we still get beat. But if I was the sea monster of your day, I think I'd rather do battle with you than face the tools that Shimano has stocked in Strike Zone 68 years later. Our thanks to David Borys for a great Northeast Florida report. Now, let's head on down to East Central. That's where we'll find Captain Jim Ross from Fine Line Fishing Charters. Jim, how are you?
Doing fantastic this week, Rick.
Good. Happy 4th of July, by the way. There's no country I'd rather fish in.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
No doubt about it. Hey, Jim, what's going on down there inshore-wise?
Well, inshore, we've still got a pretty good trout bite going on. And, of course, trout is the staple of our inshore fishery throughout the entire state. And this area has still got a fairly decent trout population throughout the Indian Banana and Mosquito Lagoons. But, we've had to change tactics, as we've mentioned in past shows. We've had to change tactics because there's a lack of habitat. So right now it's really critical that the guys and gals that are getting out there this week concentrate on areas with bait. And if you can find areas with bait that are either along a drop-off or around a rocky area, a rocky point, a spoil island, a jetty, any kind of rocky area that there's a hard structure that the fish can hold around, that seems to be key, especially the last couple of days that I've been out, to finding groups of trout.
That doesn't sound bad at all. You heard anything from offshore?
The offshore guys were fussing a little bit here the last couple of days. We've had some cold water move in, and it kind of shut down the kingfish bite, shut down a lot of the bites. The one exception seems to be the mangrove snapper. They're kind of, hovering above that thermocline, if you will.
Right.
And those fish are still, that's a very strong bite right now. Chumming and chunking is the way to get those fish up. It's also, believe it or not, somebody saw a pogie off of Port Canaveral. One or two of them slipped through your net up there and somehow got down this way. We actually, over the weekend, had a pretty decent group of pogies that showed up along the bite area, had some tarpon and king mackerel in it, and also some sharks. They started moving southward down the beach. I'm assuming they're, pushing away from that cold water scenario that we had talked about. Hopefully that cold water won't stick around for very long. The southwest winds that we had the last couple of days, it really happened quickly. It really, really quickly compared to most years. But it's one of those situations where if we don't get that water moving back in the right direction and bringing some warm water back in, it's going to be a pretty slow season for the rest of the year. We had that happen a couple of years ago where we had a really strong cold water upwelling for almost a week, and it took almost 3 weeks for the water to get back to where it was holding good numbers of fish again. And we don't need that kind of a scenario again. We need it to right itself rather quickly before all those fish decide to leave and go to another area and then have to slowly migrate their way back in.
Jim, I've always felt like the thermoclines happen, like you said, you got it on a west wind. It's almost the water turning over. I mean, as the wind pushes more water offshore, the water that it pulls up from the bottom of the ocean is where the upwelling comes from. Is that right?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Hey, I got a question for you on your way out. All right? I've been thinking about the disaster that is our management when it comes to fisheries management. Yeah.
No, come on now.
The comedy that it is.
They're professionals. They know exactly what they're doing.
But what if we simplified the process? What if instead of managing trout and the limit's different than it is for redfish and the limit's different than it is for drum, yada, 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 if we reached a standard limit and we said you could take 3 redfish, 3 drum, 3 trout, 3 kingfish, 3 red snapper, 3 whatever you want to say, but we're going to deal with the season much like a hunting season. All right, you guys can fish from June 1st to, September 1st, and the rest of the year you're shut down. Now take your guide hat off, because I know what you're thinking. I got to do business during the wintertime too. But
yeah, I have to get a lawn service.
Right. From a fisherman's point of view, which one would you rather see?
It's kind of interesting. If we weren't in such a state of mismanagement, I wouldn't say that, I would say that a season is a horrible idea. But we are in such a state of mismanagement that, a fresh thought process like that may just work. Now, as a guide, obviously I wouldn't see it because, we fish 12 days or 12 months a year here in the state of Florida, as well, even as you guys do there in Jacksonville. I mean, there's no shutdown time for us. It's not like we're up in Missouri and the river ice is over and then you got to cut a hole in the water to go fishing. We can launch a boat every day and go. But it's an interesting concept. I can tell you that it would be it would probably be a better idea than what we've got going on right now, because I'll tell you, it's hard to stomach some days.
Everybody
some
reaches,
of the management processes.
Right. Everybody reaches a tipping point. My tipping point was knowing full well that our mahi fishing is a shadow of what it used to be. So their answer was to take the boat limit from 60 down to 54. Anybody's caught 60 in the last 20 years. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, they just, when they come up with ideas like that, I just lose so much faith in the system. If you want to manage mahi, fine. Let's take it from 10 to 4. Let's just do something meaningful.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. Yeah, with the state of mismanagement that we have currently, it would be difficult because we are based on tourism. This state's economy is based on tourism. It's not based on industry or anything else, and so it would be very hard for many, not just ourselves, but for guys in the entire statewide. It would be difficult for those guys from a business standpoint, but from a management standpoint, honestly, I'm willing to try just about anything at this point.
Right,
I mean,
right.
anything other than what the heck they've got going on. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Like you said, with some of the regulations that we have.
Oh, as a side note, as I tell you goodbye, enjoy your 3-day snapper season this week, will you?
You know what? I'm going to be scalloping, so I'm not even going to be on the Atlantic coast.
I don't blame you a bit. Thank you, Cap. I appreciate it.
I'm going to be dealing with a tropical storm scenario, but I'd rather deal with a tropical storm than what is to be the red snapper season for the east part of the state.
I tell you what, fishing in the middle of the tropical storm is probably less frustrating and safer. All right, buddy. We'll talk next week. Thank you, Jimmy.
Take care, Rick.
Our thanks to Jim Ross for a great East Central report. Now it's time to swing on a little further south and check in with my favorite little fishing village, Stuart, Florida. John, how are you?
I'm good, Rick. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you, Captain John Earhart. Tell me what's going on with the fishing in Stuart.
Well, let's talk offshore. This week offshore, it seems like the sail fishing slowed down significantly. We're going out there and we're fishing, 3/4 of the day to catch 1 or 2 fish. So, I mean, there's still some sailfish around, but it just seems like the numbers of fish have kind of dwindled off a little bit. We're making up for it with some nice blackfin tuna, a lot of bonitas, and the occasional mahi here and there. And on the reef, a little shallower, 70 to maybe 120 feet of water. The bottom fishing's been pretty steady this week. So mangrove snappers, lanes, muttons, and some nice cobias too. We're fishing long leaders with a fish finder rig on the bottom, and that's going to produce most of your snappers, some grouper, amberjacks, and cobias as well.
Gotcha. Now, John, the sailfish peaked just before the full moon in June. Will they peak again in July, or are they done for the year?
It's very possible we may see another run, right around that full moon again in July. I mean, it usually always happens in June and July. Sometimes you get lucky and you get like a weak one in June, and then you get a real strong one in July, or vice versa. So I'm thinking we're going to get another push of sailfish in July, and then that'll be pretty much it until the winter run starts.
Well, just so you know, I mean, I know I've taken a lot of blame, but just because I came down there and fished a week, that doesn't mean I caught them all, okay? I tried to leave a few for you guys. What do you...
You weren't supposed to catch the sentinel.
That's it. I think I did. What are you doing inshore this week? How's that going?
Inshore's been pretty steady. Catching a lot of snook. fish up to 40 inches around the St. Lucie Inlet. I've seen a lot of tarpon right now around the inlet as well. There's some bigger fish in the inlet. I saw fish up to 100 pounds. Most of them are 50 to 70 pounds right now. Some jack crevalles, occasional redfish. They've been catching some nice Cubera snappers in shore as well. So, it's been a good mixed bag. Using live pilchards. If you're fishing with shrimp, you can expect some catfish, black chum, croaker, few sheepshead, maybe an occasional triple tail. But right now, I'd focus on snook with live pilchards.
Any mullet on the move yet?
Haven't seen a lot of mullet this week, but usually in July, we'll start seeing a push of mullet, and then in August we can start to see the first signs of our annual mullet run.
Right. I'll be ready for that. Captain John, as always, we appreciate it so much, and we'll see you down there in the next few weeks, all right?
Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Cap. Talk to you next weekend. Now it's time for us to move on down south and check in with Captain Alan Sherman. But before we do that, let's hear from D.O.A. and find out what Mark Nichols and the boys are up to. Yeah, it's finally getting hot, and of course that means the water is warming up just like the air. And just like the great fish always do, the biggest and the baddest of so many species we fish for will soon be holding in the deeper water in an attempt to cool off. Hey, you name it. If it feeds deeper in the water column, it can't refuse the D.O.A. Terrorize. It dives straight down and crawls across the bottom with an action that no deep feeder can resist. Whether it's a crappie deep under some lily pads or a tarpon rooting around the bridge pilings, D.O.A. makes a size and color Terrorize that they can't say no to. Flashing that big, bright eye in front of any bottom-feeding game fish is just unfair. Well, maybe that's why they call D.O.A. lures the unfair advantage. All right, thanks to John Earhart for a great Stewart report. Sound like the sailfish bite has slowed down. Hey, it really is not my fault. Let's move down to Miami and check in with Captain Alan Sherman. Alan, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Rick, and yourself?
Oh, excellent, buddy. Excellent. Tell me how fishing is in South Florida.
Well, it slowed down a little bit. We had some nice weather over the weekend, but the offshore fishing was mediocre unless you went offshore looking for some dolphin. There were quite a few dolphin out there, not in big schools, but scattered under some weed lines, big mats of sargasso weeds. About anywhere from 800 to 1,100 feet of water, maybe even a little further out than that. Few birds out there with some fish under them, and most of the fish we found were under the patches. They weren't real aggressive and they weren't that big, but they were out there pretty good. We found 8 different groups, and we were able to pick a few off of each group. Didn't matter if you kept a fish in the water or not. The groups, whatever was there, would always leave, and you'd have to move on. But they were responding to live pilchards, soft plastics and jig heads, and some lip plugs, the hard plastic lip plugs. There was hardly any bait underneath the weed patches or on the weed lines, and you really didn't see any surface action. And a lot of small fish. We probably had 20 fish and kept 8. And the 8 that we kept were probably between 22 and 24 inches. Enough fish to make it worth our while.
Oh, yeah.
We spent the whole day chasing them. But when you come in closer, fishing along the reef, only a few kingfish, only a few blackfin tuna, only a sailfish or 2, and quite a few bonitas. On the bottom, the guys are still catching mutton snappers, maybe not as many as a few weeks ago or a month ago, but they are getting them over the wrecks and the deeper ledges. And they're good-sized fish. Earlier on they were 10, 12-pounders. Now maybe they're 8 to 10 pounds. And a few black groupers and some amberjacks mixed in with those fish. The next best bite has been the nighttime fishing for mangrove snappers over the reefs, anywhere from 20 feet on out to about 80 feet of water. Pick the right piece of rock, put some chum in the water, and fish some cut baits, and you stand a good chance of limiting out 5 per person, 10 inches or better on the mangrove snappers.
Let me ask you a question about chum and mangroves. Are you chumming them with like block frozen chum, or are you cutting up pilchards, or what are you doing?
No, it's mostly with the frozen block chum.
Okay.
If you didn't go that route, you could take some fresh frozen Spanish sardines because they break up fairly easy, and chop them into tiny pieces and spread them out. But It's so much easier with a block of chum. Just stick it in the bag, take the box, put it in a cooler just so it doesn't end up in the water, and wait a few minutes for the fish to respond. Give them 30 minutes. If you don't get some action, go hit another piece of the reef.
Are you having trouble with sharks doing that with chumming?
So it doesn't matter whether you chum or not. Where these mangrove snappers are spawning, the sharks know where they are, and they're there. So you find one of these spots, a spawning spot for the mangroves, and the sharks will be there with the snappers. They'll let you take some, and then the fish will shut down for a little while. You may have to stop fishing for 15 or 20 minutes, let everything settle down, and then see if you can't catch a few more. It doesn't take long to get five mangroves of legal size when they're spawning like this.
I'm sure of that. Now, they peaked on that full moon in June. Will they spawn again in July, or a different group?
They're going to continue this all the way into August.
Good deal. Good deal.
Yeah.
That's one fishery that seemed to have stayed very healthy for us, doesn't it?
Well, I go way, way back where we used to fill 20-gallon garbage cans, 2 or 3 a night, in 3 hours of fishing. Today, if they can fill, a couple of 5-gallon buckets, it's a good night. So it's not like it used to be, but nothing is.
Yep, that's true. Everything's changing. Captain Mallon, as always, we appreciate it so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Look forward to it, Rick.
All right, thanks to Alan Sherman for a great South Florida report. Now let's shoot across the state and check in, see what's happening with our buddy Captain Steve Dahl. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing good, Rick. How are you doing today?
Outstanding. Now, I know your fishing's good. It's always good. I think you're a little bit of a braggart, if you want the truth, but I want to hear how it's really going this week.
You know what? It's not stellar, but it's not horrible either.
No.
It's right in the middle. It's a good day of fishing. It's nothing, certainly not bad by any stretch of imagination. The backcountry's a little dirty, from some weather and stuff, but nothing that you really can't get around. You're just going to have to wait out some of your spots if you're really dedicated to that. My suggestion is maybe to use some cut bait. You're obviously going to have to sit and wait a little bit, but getting some of that scent in there, whether it be cut ladyfish, cut mullet, things like that. That always does really well for us in the 10,000 islands when, you get a little bit of a stain from some rain and higher water and things like that. So, that'll generally pick up some redfish and generally some of your biggest snook. I've caught probably some of my biggest, snook on my boat with cut ladyfish, like cut ladyfish chunks. So,
Steve, I got to tell you, the way I see it, you're just not very smart. You carry yourself over there to the Bass Pro Shop and get you some of that catfish stink bait. You'll have them snook all over you, Bubba.
Yeah, it's worth a shot. I am a consummate tinkerer. Now that you put that damn thing in my head, I'm gonna probably end up doing it.
And I can't wait to hear the results of the great Steve Dahl stink bait test. We'll see what happens.
That's not a whole career, and that's what I end up getting known for, right?
But let me tell you something. I agree 100% with what you said. If there's a better cut bait than a piece of cut ladyfish, I have no idea what it is.
Yeah, I a little tip for everybody. I don't know if a lot of people use them or not, but I like to, obviously fresh is best, if you will. So if you can catch them the day that you're fishing, that's perfect. If you have to keep them overnight or even a day, you can certainly brine them. You can kind of just Google how to brine those. But the best way to hook them, I like to cut my ladyfish. A lot of people will cut them straight. And, almost, I like to kind of go on almost like a 45-degree angle as I cut them, makes them just a little bit longer and skinnier. I try not to go wider than an inch. But what it does is it kind of gives an angle at each tip, if you will. So instead of it being, and that angle allows, a nice 2-aught or 3-aught circle hook to be able to slide in there, and it keeps that hook gap wide open. So I think your hookup percentage is a lot better if you cut them on a little bit of an angle, 30 to 45 degree angle, somewhere in that range, and that kind of gives you a area, right on that tip to kind of go through, and keeps that hook gap from getting buried into the meat, if you will.
What a great tip, because I have seen more fish lost because the point on the circle hook is fine, but you've got to get it on a round. You can't have the shank of the hook blocked. I knew a guy that kept rigging his ballyhoo on a circle hook just like you would on a J hook. That doesn't work because the circle has to complete the twist for it to get into position. Did I say that right? Does that make sense?
No, it 100% makes sense. It's exactly the same concept. It's so funny, you take some of the inshore or offshore things and apply them to inshore, and inshore versus, to offshore as well. So, this is the beauty, we're always picking up little things from each other, and, that's just something that's always worked really well for me. And, boy, you'll really notice that if you catch enough fish on those, you're going to notice your hooking percentage is going to go way up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You sure will. So what's happening besides snook?
Offshore bite's still doing pretty good, and I'll call it more near shore because we've had a little bit of windy conditions where we can't really get out as far as we want. But the near shore bite, anywhere from probably 9 to 25 miles, the permit bite is just still red hot. And we're not seeing those big 30-pound plus fish, but we're seeing plenty of fish in that 15 to 20, 22-pound range.
That's excellent.
And those are just awesome fish. And crabs are, readily available in just about every bait shop in our region. So that's not an issue. So you're not going to have to struggle to find them. And again, I preach this, but not a lot of people are doing it. We're such a backcountry oriented region, and if you just take a little bit step outside and explore some of these nearshore wrecks and reefs, boy, you're going to be greatly rewarded. So, with the permit, obviously you want to be looking for those structures out there that have the highest relief, meaning that they're the furthest vertically off the bottom. So, plenty of public numbers that are published. You'll get Collier County, wrecks and reefs lists, and you can pick those out they actually give relief data where you can ultimately find out, it's in 40 feet of water and it's, comes off the bottom 18 feet. It's a perfect scenario that you want. So, so keep an eye on that. You're going to have to do some homework or beg some of your fishing brethren for some spots. But once you get on a nice little milk run of those, you'll be duly rewarded with some really nice permit and some bonus cobia. The cobia are kind of intermittent right now, but they're around.
When do you see your best cobia fishing?
We get two little deals. We get one in the spring, March, maybe April, depending on water temps. And then we get another run in the fall. November always seems to be a really good month for us down here. So we get two nice little windows, and then throughout the year, it's just kind of a hit or miss type of thing. If they show up, they show up. But, once they do show up, you generally catch them. So it's good.
Yep, they're not the smartest fish in the school, that's for sure. Steve, as always, we appreciate it, Cap. We'll look forward to talking with you next week, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, Rick. Looking forward to it as always.
Thank you, Steve. Our thanks to Steve Dahl for a great report from all of the 10,000 islands. Now, let's swing over to Southwest and talk with our buddy Greg Stamper from Snook Stamp Charters. Snooky, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rick. How about you?
Never better, Cap. Got all my grandkids around. We have now completed the mission. I have
all your sailfish.
I have 9 grandsons. They have all released sailfish. Yep, I'm happy about that. So,
that's so awesome.
What's going on in your neck of the woods?
Oh man, I'll be honest. The entire week's been a pretty good week for us overall. We've continued to catch these snook. I mean, if you're on our beaches, and that doesn't really matter where you're from. I'm sure that Steve was talking about it from down south, from basically Marco Island all the way up to Boca Grande. There's so many snook on the beaches. Most of these things are in packs of a dozen, 15, 20.
Golly.
Every once in a while, you'll see that big girl coming down. But there is a ton of snook on our beaches, as well as our nearshore wrecks. But that slowed down a little bit this week for a couple of the guys. But I can tell you that there's no problem catching them in the back bays, especially on these outgoing tides. If you're fishing near structure, doesn't matter. Mangrove shorelines oyster bars near our passes with cut bait has been absolutely fantastic.
Oh, that's great. That is good news indeed. In fact, I was just talking about it with Steve Dahl. Ladyfish, your favorite cut bait too?
Yeah, I mean, I love ladyfish. You know, obviously, if I can get one that's about 16, 17 inches, that's kind of the perfect diameter. I have to trim her down. But if you give me a bigger one, that's fine too. I can trim it down and make it the size I need it to. The most important thing I can tell you, Rick, though, is when you're using those cut baits, you got to make sure that circle hook is exposed and almost where you're barely holding on to the bait, because a lot of times those snook will pick that thing up and that hook won't do its job.
That's so funny. We were just talking about that exact same thing, Greg. I've got a friend that rigged his ballyhoo with circle hooks the same way that he did with J hooks, and he couldn't figure out why he couldn't hook a sailfish. I knew exactly why. That hook has got to be able to twist all the way into that fish's mouth before he's hooked.
That's right. A lot of times, you know, a lot of people will take that hook and they'll put it through the backbone and then out the other side. I prefer just putting it through one time and letting that thing be exposed.
Mm-hmm.
You might lose a few baits here and there, but guess what, Rick? When you're using cut baits in my neck of the woods, the damn pinfisher is just going to pick it apart anyhow. You got to check it every 10 minutes, so who cares?
Yep. That's everywhere. Pinfish are everywhere. They're like cockroaches. You can't find any place where there's not pinfish. What are you hearing from the offshore boys?
Offshore's been good. They've had a couple great days where they were able to get out there far. The guys that continue to get out there real far, Rick, and I'm talking 150, which I know in your neck of the woods, 150 is like you're probably hitting a driver to 150 from your house, I would think.
Well, no, now
when
I'm down in Stewart, that's true, but when I'm in Jacksonville, it's just as far to 150 as it is for you down there.
All right. Well, then you know these guys are getting out there 50 miles plus, and they're doing very, very well. Of course, the red snapper continues to be a good thing out deep. That's where the bigger ones are, and the scamps. I mean, Rick, I just keep telling these people that scamps are poisonous. Just give it to me. I'll take it home. But it doesn't work. They just keep bringing them back and keep taking them home.
Do you realize that we have 49 states attached to us, which 95% of the people have never eaten a piece of scamp grouper? You know that, right?
Well, you know, I can understand that, Rick, because once you taste one, you know why it doesn't get very far from the boat when it hits the dock.
We are some blessed men. We have grown up eating scamp grouper.
You got it, man. Other than that, it's just been basically the tarpon, same thing. That's going to continue for a while. And the permit bite, and here's a little tidbit for everybody. You don't have to have crabs right now. The guys are going out there with shrimp, free-lining them on these wrecks and reefs, and they're doing just fine with permit as well. So you don't have to go out there and put your time in right now and catch a bunch of crabs. You can go out there with live shrimp.
What's a big permit right now?
Well, you know, the guys don't bring the big ones in. They don't eat those. They will keep the smaller ones. But typically this time of year, you get one that's 20, 25 pounds. That'd be a nice fish. If you get one more than that, that's a big boy. Most of the fish that I've seen that come in that people will eat, they're small, Rick. They're maybe 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 pounds in that ballpark. You know, I don't kill permit myself, but some people do like to have them. And the good part is they're picking the right ones. They're not picking those big ones that are out there breeding.
Yeah, I got to tell you, you take any fish that is shaped like a permit, be it a permit, a jack crevalle, a pompano, any of those big broad-sided fish, boy, they're all bad to the bone when it comes to fighting, aren't they?
Oh, I love those forked tails. Any fish with a forked tail, you're going to get that. You're going to be like, this thing's got to be 50 pounds. You get it in, you're like, that's it?
All 12 pounds of that jack crevalle? You got it. Thank you, Captain Greg. Please tell me we can talk to you next week.
You got it, Rick. Have tight lines all week.
Captain Greg Stamper from Snook Stamp Charters.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalube marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalube full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamaha Marine Oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha. Reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is the mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to his name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to use second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Let's move into West Central and check in with Captain Ray Markham. Raymond, how are you?
Fantastic. Trying to screw my tie downs down into the ground and, and tying everything up. And
it is that time of year, isn't it?
Yeah, buddy.
Yep.
Yeah.
How's fishing going?
Well, up to today, it's been okay. We still have red tide issues around. One of the things I'm noticing on the most recent reports is it seems to be moving even further north. It's all the way up on the Gulf side to Newport Richey at this point. But I'm not seeing huge fish kills. There are some fish kills, but to me, it's minuscule numbers of fish. Nothing like it was in the past few years, which is a good thing. And we've got this tropical storm that's working its way north here into the Gulf and probably right up the coast here tomorrow night. And I'm hoping that with this coming in here, it will break up some of this red tide stuff and minimize the effects of what we have. And in just my personal opinion, but what I've seen in past years, whenever we have had a hurricane or a tropical storm depression or something like that, and shortly after the storm passes, the fishing actually gets really good. So
good.
I'm sure it's going to move some fish. With all that's coming, we're going to be on the not so nice side of the storm if it does go in the path they're predicting, which means tide surge, flooding, 1 to 3 feet extra water. So I'm not in any kind of issue with that. The old place in Terracea, I would have been the first one to get my toes wet, but thank goodness I'm high and dry right now, and keep my fingers crossed for those who aren't. So,
what have you heard? What have you heard from the snapper fishermen?
Snapper fishing, it's actually been really good. I mean, snapper's been good. All kinds of grouper, gags, reds, and anything in between. The varieties of snappers is what's really kind of cool. They're getting 5 or 6 different kinds out there, and the things that I have to even look up sometimes. So, but the fishing's been good offshore when they're getting out. The big boats that are really getting out deep, 60 to 80 miles, 90 miles, they're doing some kind of ungodly damage out there with some big fish. They're really coming back in with some great catches of fish. So, it's the inshore guys. They're still ticking away. Just to the south of us here. Actually, Sarasota has been clear of any red tide, and getting some reports from Captain Rick Grassett down in that area. When the wind's been reasonable, they've been getting out on the beaches and catching some tarpon, which is a good thing. They haven't left, and they appear to be a lot hungrier since this last full moon. And on the inshore scene down that neck of the woods, they're doing fairly well at deep grass with bluefish, trout, some Spanish mackerel. There's places along the coastline that are hosting schools, and we have a buttload of fry bait that's in the bay, scale sardines, and little inch long things. So the guys throwing artificials, little baits seem to be doing really well right now. So
that's good. That's good. I hope the guys keep the cast nets off those little ones until they get bigger. It doesn't do you any good to make a Christmas tree out of your cast net.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I can tell the guys who are really not doing that. You go to any car wash and you find remnants of pieces of bait all over the place in these places. So
I'm sure. Well, Cap, that's an outstanding report, and we appreciate the heck out of it. Now, do scallops get as far south as you, or do you have a scallop season there?
Well, we don't have a scallop season here in Pinellas County. There's a brief season, and honestly, I'd have to take a look at it. I think it's only about a week long, but it's up in Pasco, Hernando. But north of that, the regular season is open already. I think June 1st it opened up there. I haven't been able to get in touch with any of my buds up that direction, but I'm sure William Tony will probably fill you on it here briefly.
Yeah.
He's in the heart of gold up there. So hopefully they got something good going on to tell you.
I think so. All right, Cap, as always, Ray, we appreciate it so much. Please tell me we can talk to you next week.
Yes, sir. If I don't get blown away or drown in the process, we'll all be here.
Ain't going to happen, Cap. It's all going to be fine. Talk with you next week. Thank you, Raymond. Now let's check in with one of my favorite guys who never has a bad day because he's the mayor of Homosassa, one William Tony. William, how are you?
We're doing good down here in downtown Homosassa. For a 4th of July weekend break, I tell you, it was a little relaxed from what I've used to been seeing.
Every day I run out to the UPS guy to see if he has a box of scallops for me, and I have not received a one. What's going on over there?
Well, I think I sent them to you, but they may be a little bit late in the mail. So if you do see a box from Homosassa, you may want to bag that up and throw it away.
You got it. How's the season been going so far?
Well, you know what? Compared to last year, it is probably 100% better. Now, I've been out before the season and talked to a lot of captains who were in the water looking for them and said it was good. Now, all the reports and everything, even my father was out this past couple days, and they were getting 3 to 4 to 5 to a dive. So big improvement from last year. Yeah, so it's game on. And the big thing right now that's going to hamper people from getting out there, of course, is what we got coming to our way. And, that could do a lot of things, change the salinity. But I think what's there, and from when I was talking to my father, who's also my third-generation father, guide captain, he said a lot of them are small. He said some of them are about the size of maybe between $0.25 and $0.50. So what I would stress to folks out there who are scalloping, those small scallops like that, don't harvest them. Leave those, let them grow. By the end of August, they'll be, the full-on size. So what happens when you get scallops that small, you're allowed 2 gallons per harvester with the license and everything, is you're basically taking double or triple the amount at that size.
Right.
So, so use good judgment and let those little ones grow, when you're out there. And then that way we'll just have plenty throughout the whole season.
Yep. Well, why don't we talk about fishing a little bit? How's your fishing been?
Fishing's been great. Trout fishing's been real good. Getting a lot of nice trout down in Chassahuisca Bay, up toward Mangrove Point, and then the other hot spot is out there off the spoil banks just north of Crystal River, getting some snook in there too on those big rock drop-offs on the old dredged-in canal. And gag grouper season's been very good. Now we've had some stormy weather, so a lot of guys have been getting out about 18 foot, but been getting their limit. And you just got to kind of watch the weather. And as we're speaking right now, that's what all our eyes on here on the Big Bend. And hopefully this thing ain't no big deal, and it just gets on past this, and we can get on with our lives, and it'll all be good.
Yep, that's just exactly what I'm counting on. How about the American red snapper? Have they held up to the pressure pretty good? Are they still biting in your area?
They have, and like I said, the last week or so, not a lot of folks have been getting out because of the weather. But before we had all this, rain and high seas and everything, it was no problem, getting the limit very quickly. But you're starting about 70 feet of water, so 60-mile run offshore to get those fish. Getting them on cut threadfin, frozen sardines, any of that, just getting there is the main thing, and then you can catch them.
Good deal. Good deal. Cap, we appreciate it. Our best to you guys. I know we'll be watching that storm. It doesn't look like it's going to be much, and I hope that's exactly what happens. But one thing for sure, if it's all right with you, we'll check with you next week.
I'll be here next week. Like I said, the main thing is that thing knocks it down. It'd be a good day to sit inside and watch some TV or anything like that and just be done and gone with it. It looks like Wednesday afternoon. We'll be in the clear.
Sounds like a plan to me. Thank you, Captain William Toney. Now let's head on up into the Big Bend. But before we do that, let's remind folks that this week's Action Spotter, along with each and every week's Action Spotter, is brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature back together. By D.O.A. Lures, your unfair advantage. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream billfish destination. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Our thanks to William Toney for a great Big Bend report. Now, let's get up into Northwest Florida and check in with KC Sports Fishing Adventures, which I believe this guy is pretty happy to have a new World Cat this summer. Am I right, Captain Kevin?
Captain Rick, I cannot say enough good things about the World Cat. I cannot imagine fishing in this last week in anything but that boat.
It's been nasty over there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been nasty. East wind just kicks our butt over here. You can take the wave height forecast and double it, and it just it's rough.
Yep. I have fished some weather this year myself, and I know you and I've talked about it before, but I swear it's either I'm getting older or it's getting rougher, and I know I'm not getting older.
Well, it is getting rougher, so I think we may have two true statements there.
Yeah, that could be. That could well be. Tell me how your snapper fishing's been.
Snapper fishing's been good. We kind of had a little wane with the full moon coming through, but we were still able to pick up some real quality fish. The bite slowed a little bit. I had a trip the other day where I had something that I've never done a pair of. I got 10 red snapper and 10 black snapper in the same trip.
I'll be darned. That's interesting. That's cool. That's way cool.
It is.
Now,
it is because we normally, maybe 10, 12 black snapper a year, but this one trip we got 10. So I was really impressed.
Now, what you call black snapper, we call mangrove snapper, right?
Yeah, same fish.
And what is your size over there?
They normally run, I would say, 5 to 10 pounds.
Right.
These guys were in the probably 3 to 6 pound range.
It's funny to me because I've fished over in the Gulf and I've made some of those John's Pass trips, and I'll catch a mangrove that is 4 pounds, and everybody's like, "Whoa, God, oh man, that's a good one." I gotta tell you, up here in Northeast Florida, 10 pounds is not at all uncommon. And I have seen mangroves, or what you call black snapper, that weighed 14 pounds before.
Oh yeah, I mean it's quite a change from down south coming up here, getting into those mangroves. They're not as thick, but man, are they studs.
Yeah. Now, I don't like eating the bigger ones as much. Do you?
Oh no, I mean it's a true statement with any fish, in my opinion.
Yeah, those little 15-inch mangroves are just where I want to be. Well, that's outstanding. Not outstanding that you've had to battle that kind of weather, but you're still pretty much limited out on snapper every day?
Yeah, pretty much. I think we've had one trip that we didn't get our limit on, but we still wound up, I think we were 2 fish shy of it. So definitely nothing to complain about. The grouper bite's been good. And, I keep getting surprised every day. I mean, I get 2 real quality grouper on frozen cigar minnows, whereas you think you got to have live bait for grouper. So I just scratch my head all the time. But the other cool thing is we're getting we're getting kings every day too with our flat line. So I always tell people, don't forget that flat line.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's a fantastic report. Batten down the hatches. Be ready for a couple of days of even more storms and wind, and then it's going to be nice for you the rest of the year, I promise.
Oh, you promise? I
Yeah,
can
I
have
promise.
that. We can put that in writing and send it to me.
And I already promised my wife on my next fishing trip I'd be home by 1 o'clock.
Okay.
One of those has as much of a chance of happening as the other. Thank you, Cap. We appreciate it as always.
All right, great. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, Kevin. Captain Kevin Lanier. Well, we can't leave Florida till we go to the Panhandle, so let's check in with Captain Tyler Massey. Tyler, how are you?
We're doing good, Rick. How are y'all?
Oh, we're doing outstanding, buddy. Tell me what's going on with your fishing.
Yeah, man. So it's a little bit of the same, kind of like how our summer goes, but offshore bottom fishing, red snapper is definitely still the name of the game. We got another month or so to catch them, so I think most everyone's gonna be focusing their attention on bottom fishing for snapper. So as we get into July, the bite definitely slows down just a little bit. The fish have seen a lot of pressure. They've seen a lot of baits and rigs and all that kind of stuff. So now's the time to start downsizing your tackle. Fish a spinning rod, 40-pound leader. We call it a knocker rig. Works really well where your weight sits right on top of your hook. No swivel or nothing. Just try to minimize your tackle and smaller bait, smaller hook, smaller leader.
Gotcha. All right, that sounds like excellent advice. How's the grouper bite with them? Are they doing much?
The grouper bites, its scamp grouper has been pretty good. A little bit further offshore, in the 200 to 270 range, 200 or 270 foot. That grouper bite for us has just been a little slow this year. It seems like they just haven't really replenished over the last few years, just on a regular, snapper fish and stuff. If you go a little deeper and fishing bigger baits, you definitely can catch some, but it just hasn't been as good with the mixed bite.
I think you're right, Tyler. I don't think they are a fish that replenishes very well. We had a very traumatic event over here in Northeast Florida about 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago now. And the grouper, we had a huge influx of fresh water. Just this huge amount of rain over a 48-hour period. The divers found several grouper after the event laying on the bottom either dead or dying, and they've never really recovered. They just, there's a few around, and we've caught a few of the juveniles up in our rivers. But it used to be the juveniles in our rivers would be a pest, and we could count on them offshore every year. But man, when they suffer a setback, it does seem to take a long time for them to come back.
Yeah, I agree. There's something similar going on here, whether we just don't have the habitat that supports them to start over here. After Hurricane Ivan in 2004, we were flooded with grouper. They got pushed up from somewhere, and it was just the best fishing ever. And it's kind of just got worse and worse ever since then. But yeah, so it definitely to our east, they catch a lot more gag groupers and red groupers. It's just kind of been fizzling out here a little bit, it seems like.
That's interesting. Nobody's made it to the rigs this week, I take it.
No, not too much. We've had I think kind of with the rest of the state, a lot of wind and that kind of stuff. It hasn't been very too good of conditions to head out there. But as soon as that weather breaks, I'm sure we got some people running out there.
Gotcha. Okay, Captain Tyler, as always, we appreciate it. We'll talk with you next week.
All right, Rick. Y'all take care. We'll see you.
Thank you, Tyler. Captain Tyler Massey. Hey, that wraps up our trip around the state tonight. And there was a lot of interesting things. First off, up in Northeast Florida, man, you could hear the frustration in David Boreas' voice as he talked about the muddy water. And I know it has made it tough on him, so many things that they fish for. And I was a little surprised to hear the East Central being so good for big trout. Big trout have not been very prevalent anywhere this year, but it sounds like Jim Ross has got them pretty well dialed in and is starting to see an increase in his bait supply. That may have a reason why. There's more pogies on the beach. There's been more mullet in the lagoon. You head on down through Stewart, and they talk about the sailfish having peaked and broken up. They're not in packs anymore. They're in individuals, and you may fish all day for one or two. That makes it kind of tough. Bait's been very easy there, by the way. Go to the bull shark barge, get all you want. Captain Alan Sherman said they had a pretty good week on mahi. Not bad. Numbers are pretty good. The size isn't real big, but as long as we've got fish, we'll take it, because some of them will certainly grow up. And, on mahi, they grow up really fast. I'll never forget the experiment they did at Miami Rosenthal with a fry mahi. They put it in a tank with unfettered access to food. And then once it got a little bigger, they moved it into a floating pen offshore, gave it unfettered access to food. And on its second birthday, 70 pounds, if you can believe that. So mahi literally grow by the day. And if there's small ones in South Florida, there will be big ones soon. You jump across, everybody's a little concerned about the tropical storm, of course, but their fishing has been holding up pretty good. I know that the snook on the beach have just been really cooperative for Greg Stamper and Steve Dahl. All those fish cruising around the Sanibel area, when the water's clear enough to see them, you can see them moving in packs up and down the beach. What a fun way to fish. You get up into West Central, Ray Markham says the kingfish are biting just about everywhere. Their snook numbers are good, and they've got a ton of bait in the bay, but it's very small. So when you're fishing up there, either flies or small minnow imitations are doing best on snook, redfish, and trout. In the Big Bend, Captain William Toney was very happy with his trout numbers, said redfish hadn't been particularly good. The scallops are plentiful, but they're small. And finally, as you work your way out the Panhandle and out through lower Alabama, if you will, it's all about the red snapper and the weather to go. If the boys can get there, they're still getting their limits. They're having to work a little harder. Maybe the fish aren't quite as big, but it has been a very successful red snapper season for them. On the East Coast, red snapper season, 3 days long. It'll happen the end of this week, so we'll have the reports on that and a whole lot more for you next week when we come back with another edition of Florida Sportsman Magazine Action Spotter Podcast. As always, it's brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature back together. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat, spay, and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Hey, for Florida Sportsman Magazine Live, I'm Captain Rick Riles. Until next week, we'll see you on the ring.